Welcome to the oratory of St. Catherine of Siena. This is one of a series of talks on saints during times of crisis, looking at how various Christians from the beginning of the faith until now have served in prayer and action in accordance with their faith during some of the most challenging times in this earth's history. Today, we are looking at Frances Perkins. Let us reflect on her life and legacy. She was a woman who embodied the call to serve God and her neighbor through her extraordinary service during a time of crisis. While she has never been formally named a saint, she is a shining example of what it means to live your life in faith. Frances Perkins, the first woman to serve as a cabinet secretary in the United States, held the position of Secretary of Labor during one of the nation's darkest periods, the Great Depression. The Great Depression, 1929 to 1939, was a global economic crisis marked by widespread unemployment, poverty, and severe declines in industrial production and trade, triggered by the 1929 U.S. stock market crash. It led to bank failures, loss of savings, and widespread hunger. In the United States, unemployment peaked at 25%, and countless families faced homelessness. Frances Perkins' work, deeply rooted in her Christian faith, reminds us of how God can use us to bring hope and healing to the world. Frances was not merely a public servant. She was a servant of Christ. A devout Episcopalian, she saw her work as a holy calling. Her faith compelled her to respond to the suffering around her with courage and compassion. When millions were unemployed and families went hungry, Frances drew strength from her belief that every human being is made in the image of God and deserves dignity and justice. One pivotal moment in Frances's life occurred in 1911 when she witnessed the Triangle Shirtwaist Factory fire in New York City. The tragedy claimed the lives of 146 workers, most of them young women. Frances, then a social worker, was horrified by the preventable loss of life. This event ignited her lifelong commitment to workplace safety and labor rights. Her faith reminded her that God's kingdom calls for justice to roll down like waters and righteousness like an ever-flowing stream. Amos 5:24. She became a relentless advocate for those whose voices were ignored. As Secretary of Labor, Frances was the architect of many policies that still shape our society today, including Social Security, unemployment insurance, and minimum wage laws. These were not just political achievements. They were acts of faith. Frances understood that true discipleship requires action, that caring for the least of these is not optional, but essential to our walk with Christ. Her work was not without opposition. She faced criticism and resistance from those who saw her reforms as too radical. But Frances persevered, leaning on prayer and the sacraments to sustain her. She once said, "The door might not be open to me again, but I could push the door open just a little wider." That is the boldness of faith at work, a faith that sees obstacles not as barriers, but as opportunities to bring God's justice into the world. What can we learn from Frances Perkins today? Like her, we are called to live out our faith in a world full of crises, whether it's economic inequality, injustice, war, or the needs of the poor and the marginalized. The work before us is vast. Yet God does not call us to do this work alone. Francis reminds us that when we ground our actions in faith, prayer, and community, we can be instruments of God's grace and transformation. Let us be inspired by Frances Perkins, who showed us that faith is not merely what we believe, but what we do. Let us go forth with her example as a reminder that God calls each of us in our own way to push open the doors of justice and love. Amen.